two, one.
Hello and welcome back to Radio M. Today we are located on Institut Montana Zuckerberg in Switzerland. My name is Ethan Diedrichsen, I'm 14 years old and I'm Swiss Canadian.
My name is Ian Diedrichsen. I'm 15 years old and I'm also Swiss Canadian, like my brother. Today we will be discussing a very important topic that affects all our lives climate change. And our guest today, Tony Pereira, is an expert in this field. He's the founder of the Sustainable Engineering Institute and is also a Fulbright scholar. Tony, my first question to you: why is it important for all of us to study climate change?
It's a dramatic question. In the last 150 years, 200 years, some developments have occurred, and they fall entirely on the shoulders of human beings. Uh, in the consumption, the amounts of resources that they are using, and years apart, it is difficult to understand. Might be difficult to understand for the majority of people uh, on, on the planet, is that the consumption is non-linear. What that means is that if we talk about an average, that average hides the truth because half of the population lives on the planet with between $0 and $4 a day, and that's 4 billion people. And from the remaining 4 billion, there are uh, 10, 20 countries that use 80% of the resources of the planet. That means air, water, food, plants, soil, animals, energy, oil. That's the most thing that is talked about. And everything else, jets, SUVs, cruise ships, designer clothing, expensive watches, cars, everything else. So that is what it means to be non-linear. That means we cannot go on one line and say everybody consumes the same. We are all equal. No, we're not. And due to that, the devastation that is being imposed on all of the ecosystems of the planet is very serious, is major, and we are just beginning to see the effects. And at this point, it's totally impossible already to begin to stop those. So we are in a very dramatic and very serious situation. Thanks for the question.
Can you give us an example of the consequence that we are seeing in this day and age?
There are many. There are multiple. The consequences is important to, or is critical to underline that the consequences are an effect, and there is a reason for that. The reason for that is that we have burned so much of fossil fuels. The number is staggering. It's 600 with 12 zeros after that in tons. It's an enormous number, very difficult for the average person to understand how much that is. And that gas, the CO2, carbon dioxide, enters the atmosphere, has entered the atmosphere, and it remains there for a considerable amount of time. It doesn't extinct, it doesn't disappear, it stays there. And what happens is that we receive all of the energy that we receive comes from the sun, believe it or not, including everything that is on the planet. We are the sons and daughters of the sun. That's one of the quotes from Carl Sagan from years ago. And with dust from the stars, from toe to eye. So the energy that we receive in the form of radiation, some of it we can see, some we cannot, enters the atmosphere, hits the ground, hits the oceans, some of it stays on the planet, and a good part, about 30%, goes back into space, into the cold of space. What happens is that CO2 makes a barrier and it lets the high frequency radiation from the sun enter the atmosphere, and it does not allow the low radiation, the infrared and the high infrared spectrum, to go back into space. Therefore, we have a net positive gain of energy that comes from the sun that the planet cannot shed. Now to the consequences: melting of the polar caps, warming of the oceans, acidification of the water from the ocean,
Uh-huh.
which is usually a level, a pH level of acidification level of 7.8, if I'm not um, if my memory serves me right, and you can verify that number. But it's lowering, it's getting lower, and what happens? It does eat
Mhm.
away the shells of the crustaceans and other marine creatures. And in addition, the warming of the ocean is causing gigantic works of huge works of nature, like the East Barrier Reef in Australia, a marvel of creation we cannot even begin to comprehend, of 1,200 miles from North Australia, almost to Queensland, to the south, which is the most productive ecosystem on the planet, begins to disappear because corals live within the margin of 1 degree centigrade. And if that uh, 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 temperature changes, the coral dies. But if it continues and comes back, but if it continues the same, then the coral begins to go extinct and disappear. Vast expanses of the ocean. But that's not the only one. There is all around the world, here off the coast of my country in the Caribbean. Then the circulation in the oceans can change. That was discovered in one of the currents by Ben Franklin on one of his trips to Europe to find money for the American Revolution with the French. And when he came back, he noticed that the boat would take a different amount of would run slower because of the ocean currents. If that changes, the amounts of energy and mass in those currents that are going to be affected in their movement. That includes temperatures, salinity, and the leaving mass. That's something that is studied in the thermodynamics in heat and mass transport. Again, those quantities are enormously high. We haven't even begun to understand the effects of those and the consequences of those. Then global warming, we already seen
Thank you,
the effects of
Professor.
those
Let me
bigger
just
storms, lower storms. So those are some of them. It's just a very concise
Thank you,
amount of
Professor. Let me
uh,
just reset so the people know where we are. For the people just joining us right now, we are Radio M on Institut Montana Zuckerberg in Switzerland. My name is Ethan Diedrichsen. I'm joined by my brother Ian Diedrichsen and by a very special guest, Tony Perea. He has a PhD in mechanical engineering, and he is also the founder and CEO of the Institute for Sustainable Engineering, short form ISE. So, Tony, my next question is, what would you say to the people who don't believe in climate change?
well, that's not a question of believing or not believing. Science is the if even if you believe science or you don't believe science, the science is still there. So they have to change their attitude. They need to try to educate themselves and maybe go back to school, maybe study this time instead of thumbing their fingers when they were in school. and apply themselves. So put their head to work. Science does not depend on belief. Science is a process of verification, of corroboration, of study, many years of study. Just to take a high school, takes to 12 years of study plus four. That's about 16, 17 years. If you're going to go for an undergrad, there's put another 4 or 5 years in there. And if you're going to go higher for a master's or a PhD or a doctorate, you're spending 30 years of your life studying. So this is no joke. People that say that think they are funny. They're not. And if they believe that science, they can say things like that, stop flying, because that's science that makes planes to go in the sky and not coming back. Stop crossing a bridge. Don't go over a bridge. That's engineers that do that. They make a solemn pledge before graduating that they will take care of the general public. So that's a very, very, very bad joke, saying things like that. Not funny.
And my next question is, what can a regular person do to make it better, or to make a change in the environment?
Individually is entirely possible, and that's what I do in on Saturdays. I started the free and open University of Eco Sustainability. It's critical at this point that I don't talk about sustainability. I know about 350 definitions of sustainability. For instance, if my dad gives me $10 $20 a week in allowance and I spend 10, I am sustainable. Hey, I'm free. I can live forever if that is possible. But that's not that definition or that state of sustainability is of no consequence. We need to become eco-sustainable, ecologically sustainable. Otherwise, our existence here on the planet makes no sense at all.
And
So
my
it's
last
the
question.
Institute of Eco-Sustainable Engineering and the Free and Open University of Free Engineering. I do that every Saturday. It's free. I don't charge. I've never charged anybody for lessons or lectures. I don't have sponsors. I don't seek sponsors at this time, and I probably will never seek sponsors. I hope to have a place open for students to come in at some time. That is bricks and mortar. That it will be a building with places to stay, and for the free and open University of Eco Sustainability. I am the only person on the planet that I know of that is pressing my colleagues, deans, chancellors, presidents, my representatives, senators, representatives, to the urgency of massively start re-educating the people on the planet, because the resources that we have and the consequences that we are affecting the planet are very, very serious. Our existence is in peril.
And my last question is, do you think we can convince politicians to do a better job?
Some, unfortunately, very few at the moment. The re-education of politicians is, or maybe just the public, is essential on that aspect, because the politicians follow the masses. Well, in some cases, they follow their head and they don't care about anything or anybody else. It's the case of dictators, tyrants, and whatnot. But the politicians that will take a firm stand and understand the gravity, they just barely touch the surface, as the urgency and the consequences that may follow. There are a group of scientists and I've met quite a few, and that say, well, the situation is so difficult and so hopeless that they throw their arms in the air and they say, we're not going to do anything. And I call your attention to those because if they are intelligent enough and knowledgeable enough to understand that the situation is so dire, so difficult, and so dangerous, they also should be able to understand, to discuss, and to openly discuss the issues and the solutions for those same situations. So this is a game. This is a game they play, and this is a case of blatant intellectual lameness or intellectual cowardice, because they should take, like everybody else, on the issue of finding the solutions and improving those solutions, and talk to the politicians and say, this is what we need to do. There is no possibility that we can live on the planet for any period of time without clean air, clean water, clean food, plants, animals, soil, and rivers, mountains, and oceans. When I was in Switzerland, I was invited to an international conference in there in some years ago, and I opened a window of my room where I was staying, and wow, that was this big mountain in there. Well, they provide watershed, they provide wildlife, so we cannot live without those things. Without we have to stop putting anthropogeneity, an expensive. We have to stop put man in front of everything. We don't create anything. We live on what the earth gives us, and that has to change. Politicians need to understand that. Common man needs to understand that. Scientists need to understand that. It's the earth that comes first. We come second. We live from the water, from head to toe, from eye to knee. We live from the energy of the sun. We live from clean water, clean air, clean soil, clean food, plants and animals. Not the reverse. Not the reverse. That needs to be understood.
Thank you, Mr. Pereira.
I have one final question for you, Ms. Pereira. What is your vision for
Yes.
the future?
A vision for the future is four things. We have to reduce the human footprint, and I'm just talking about those things. I have no clue if you understand those things or not. The human footprint has to be reduced. For example, in your country, if everybody lived in your country the same way on the planet, and that would be a real per capita average, not what happens now. So if everybody and inside your country, we would need not one or two or three planets. We would need 5, 6, or 7. So all 8 billion people on the planet live the way that I live in my country, that everybody lives in my country. Well, my already reduced quite a bit. We would need 6, 7, or 8 planets. The same in England, the same all over Europe, the same all over the United States, and now other countries around the planet as well. So the average per capita needs to be reduced to below 1 planet, because that's what we have. We can't cut it into make 2 planets or 3 or 4. It's impossible. And then we need, second thing, we need massive re-education on the planet on eco-sustainability, not sustainability, ecological sustainability. We need to understand that we cannot live above the means. That's a physical limit, the means of the planet. Then we need two more things. I'll come back to those as well. But those are the two most important things.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Pereira. So for everybody that was listening the entire way, thank you. We were joined today by Mr. Pereira, who has a PhD in mechanical engineering, and he graduated from UCLA. And he is also the founder and CEO of the Institute for Sustainable Engineering. This was Radio M, and see you next time.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.